Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Prasar Bharati. Coming up in the next hour. Israel says it killed a Hamas commander who helped plan October 7 attacks. Ground battles rage in Gaza after Israel escalates bombing. Hamas issues full force warning. UN General Assembly adopts Gaza resolution calling for immediate and sustained humanitarian truce. Israel slams UN resolution, says dark day for UN and mankind. Lewiston Maseka, suspect of killing 18 people, found dead near the town of Lisbon, apparently of self-inflicted gunshot wound. And Indian athletes shine at Asian Para Games in Hangzhou. Conclude event with 111 medals. The Israel Defense Force on Saturday announced it had killed the Hamas commander who led the group of terrorists that infiltrated Israel on paragliders on October 7th. The terrorist, identified as Asim Abu Raqaba, was also responsible for the drone attacks on the military's posts. IDF has killed several of Hamas's top commanders since October 7, when the terrorist group infiltrated the country and killed 1,400 people, including women and children. The group also holds over 200 people hostage, including foreigners. On October 14, the IDF reportedly killed the previous head of the group's aerial forces, Murad Abu Murad. On Friday night and Saturday morning, Israel's Air Force attacked 150 underground targets of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip. Israel said on Saturday morning that its troops sent in on Friday night were still in the field without elaborating. The country had earlier made only brief sorties into Gaza during 3 weeks of bombardment to root out Hamas militants, who, it said, had killed 1,400 Israelis on October 7th. Multiple explosions were seen in Gaza on Saturday morning with thick plumes of smoke rising above buildings. The Israeli military said it had entered northern Gaza overnight and expanded military operations with infantry and armored corps in the besieged Palestinian enclave as it steps up its assault on the Hamas militant group. Military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said Israeli forces were still in the field without elaborating. Hamas pledged to confront Israeli attacks with full force after Israel's military widened its air and ground attacks on Palestinian enclave, suggesting on Saturday that a long-promised ground offensive had begun. Gaza was under an almost complete blackout, with internet and phone services cut for more than 12 hours by Saturday morning. Telecoms and firms and the Palestinian Red Crescent Society said it was a result of Israeli bombardments. The head of WHO, Tedros Adhanom, he said that the blackout was making it impossible for the ambulances to reach the injured in Gaza. Now, Israeli military has told international news agency Reuters and AFP that it cannot guarantee the safety of their journalists operating in the Gaza Strip. Under Israeli bombardment and siege for almost 3 weeks, the IDF latest letter stated that it is targeting all Hamas military activity throughout Gaza and that Hamas deliberately put military operations in the vicinity of journalists and civilians. Notably, on Wednesday, Al Jazeera journalist lost his family in Israeli airstrike. The IDF also noted that its high-intensity strikes on Hamas targets could cause damage to surrounding buildings and that Hamas rockets could also misfire and kill people inside Gaza. Also, drones explosions rocked 2 Egyptian towns, injuring 6 people, the Egyptian army said, as the Israeli army blamed Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi for the strike. Israel's foreign ministry said that Houthis launched drones and missiles with an intention of harming Israel. The twin explosions has raised fears of a spillover of the Israel-Hamas war. Meanwhile, Israel's military also said it had stopped a surface-to-air missile fired from Lebanon at one of its drones And the Lebanese authorities issued precautionary guidance in case it has to evacuate Beirut airport as border tensions climb. 6 aid trucks carrying medical supplies and water purification equipment have entered Gaza, Egypt on Friday. 10 International Committee of Red Cross experts, including a war surgery team and a weapons contamination specialist, were part of the aid convoy that went through Rafah crossing. Earlier, Israeli ministry had allowed trucks carrying food, water and medicine to enter Gaza on Saturday, indicating that bombing might pause, at least in the area of its border with Egypt, where small amounts of aid have been arriving. Red Cross has called for a secure and sustainable aid support for Gaza. The organization also urged the entry of fuel into Gaza, saying that fuel is essential to keep hospitals and healthcare centers operational.
Speak now, the International Committee of the Red Cross is facilitating also the entry of humanitarian aid. About 8 trucks loaded with medical supplies, drugs, most essential humanitarian assistance, along with specialized team of 10 ICRC teams, including experts in war surgery, as well as weapon contamination experts, are going to enter Gaza very soon, hopefully today, in order to start immediately supporting the first responders and their humanitarian mission. The ICRC calls for an unimpeded, secured, sustainable aid support and line to the Gaza Strip.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has appealed for the monitoring of aid deliveries to the Gaza Strip to be adjusted to allow many more trucks to enter Gaza without delay. The UN chief has welcomed the growing global consensus for a humanitarian pause in the conflict and repeated his call for a humanitarian ceasefire.
The humanitarian system in Gaza is facing a total collapse with unimaginable consequences for more than 2 million civilians. As the bombing intensifies, needs are growing ever more critical and colossal. The verification system for the movement of goods through Rafah crossing must be adjusted to allow for more trucks to enter Gaza without delay. We must meet the expectations and the core needs of civilians in Gaza. Life-saving humanitarian aid, food, water, medicine, fuel must be allowed to reach all civilians swiftly, safely, and at scale. Without a fundamental change, the people of Gaza will face an unprecedented avalanche of human suffering. Everyone must assume their responsibilities. This is a moment of truth. History will judge us.
Now, the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, in a call with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, underscored the importance of protecting civilians during operations in Gaza. This was the second call between the two leaders in the days. Earlier on Thursday, the U.S. Defense Secretary discussed with his Israeli counterpart the need to facilitate humanitarian aid into Gaza and to ensure the protection of civilians. Analysts said the strikes that United States carried out on Iranian targets are a signal to Tehran that the Biden administration does not want the Gaza conflict to spread regionally. The U.S. military carried out strikes against 2 facilities in eastern Syria in response to a spate of attacks against U.S. forces in both Iraq and Syria. An analyst, Aaron Steen, said U.S. and coalition troops have been attacked in Iran, Iraq and Syria. This allowed Iran to show that it is doing something to show its opposition to Israel's actions and U.S. support for Israel without risking a wider conflict.
The concern is with horizontal escalation, i.e. that in response to the Israeli incursions, the airstrikes that are taking place, the Iranians have been telling everybody overtly and loudly that they will proliferate, they will escalate if necessary. And again, going back to those rules, one of the ways that you can escalate without necessarily risking getting your teeth kicked in, if you're the Iranian leadership, is by doing they're harassment attacks, small indirect fire, but for the troops at the other end, they still are not pleasant.
DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh has sent this ground report from Beitel in West Bank. Situation is volatile. Take a listen.
I'm right now in a place called Batil, which is a Jewish settlement in West Bank. So this is what West Bank looks like at the moment, though Israeli is targeting mainly Gaza, which is the base of the Hamas. But there have been strikes at a couple of places in Jenin, in another refugee camp in the West Bank, and there have been many arrests made. About 110 people have died so far, more than 2,000 people injured, 700 people arrested. If I can ask my camera person to show you what Batil looks like, people, there is considerable anger amongst people. These ambulances that you see are stationed here for when the Israeli security forces come here to arrest people from settlements here, from Arab areas here, who they believe are Hamas supporters, and even Hamas, and they are accumulating weapons here, and that is why those arrests are being made. People here resist that, and in the ensuing firing, people lose their lives. This is apart from the strikes. So this is what the situation in West Bank looks like. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amrit Pal Singh in Batil, West Bank, Palestine.
The United Nations General Assembly has passed a resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian truce between Israel and Hamas and demanding aid access to Gaza. A total of 120 countries voted in favor of the resolution. 14 countries voted against, included Israel and the United States, while 45 others abstained. The resolution also demands all parties comply with international humanitarian law and continuous, sufficient and unhindered provision of life-saving supplies and services for civilians trapped inside the enclave. It also calls for the immediate and unconditional release of all civilians held captive, as well as demanding their safety, well-being and humane treatment in compliance with international law. The resolution stresses the need to urgently establish a mechanism to ensure the protection of the Palestinian civilian population and the protection of United Nations and all humanitarian facilities, as well as to ensure the unhindered movement of aid convoys. Welcoming the overwhelming support for the United Nations General Assembly resolution calling for immediate, durable and sustained humanitarian truce between Israeli forces and Hamas terrorists in Gaza, the state of Palestine has urged for compliance of this resolution. Palestine has also affirmed the need to ensure accountability with this resolution in case of non-compliance. The statement also appealed to Israel to comply with the obligations and heed the calls of the international community. The resolution made no specific mention of the Hamas terror attacks on October 7th. The Jordanian-led draft resolution was adopted by the General Assembly with 120 votes in favor, 14 against and 45 abstentions. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reiterated a two-state solution for the conflict.
Act in sync with the General Assembly, and Israel has to obey. There is no such thing as is not binding. Whatever we decide in the international community, whether in the Security Council or in the General Assembly in general or in the form of a resumed emergency session, should be binding, and it is our collective duty not to accept this continuous rebellions by a member state in refusing to honor and respect the decisions in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. So we have tools in our hand.
Meanwhile, Israel has slammed a United Nations resolution urging the humanitarian truce in Gaza and added that it's a dark day for the UN and mankind. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, stressed that Israel will continue to defend itself and use every means at its disposal to accomplish this mission.
Today is a day that will go down in infamy. We have all witnessed that the UN no longer holds even 1 ounce of legitimacy or relevance. This organization was founded in the wake of the Holocaust for the purpose of preventing atrocities. Yet, the spectacle we just saw proves beyond a doubt that the UN is committed sadly, tragically, not to preventing but ensuring further atrocities. This is a dark day for the UN and for mankind. Mr. President, Israel will continue to defend itself. We will defend our future, our very existence, by reading the words of Hamas's evil so that it can never threaten anyone else again.
Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen rejected the United Nations General Assembly's appeal for a ceasefire. He stated that Israel is committed to eradicating Hamas, likening this mission to how the world confronted the threats posed by Nazis and ISIS. Taking to X, Cohen stated, and I quote, "We reject outright the UN General Assembly's despicable call for a ceasefire. Israel intends to eliminate Hamas just as the world dealt with the Nazis and ISIS," unquote. US has reiterated that Israel has the right to defend itself. Speaking at the UN General Assembly, US Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield said the international humanitarian law must be respected throughout Gaza and the region by all actors.
States has made clear in both public and private conversations that as Israel exercises its right and indeed its responsibility to defend its people against the terrorist group, it must do so in line with the rules of war. There are no law-free zones in war. International humanitarian law must be respected throughout Gaza and the region by all actors.
Deputy Permanent Representative of India at United Nations, Ambassador Yojna Patel, said that there was a need to adopt a zero-tolerance approach to terrorism.
India is deeply concerned at the deteriorating security situation and astounding loss of civilian lives in the ongoing conflict. The escalation of hostilities in the region will only exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. It is necessary for all parties to display the utmost responsibility. India has always supported a negotiated two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue, leading to the establishment of a sovereign, independent, and viable state of Palestine, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side in peace with Israel. For this, we urge the parties to de-escalate, eschew violence, and work towards creating conditions for an early resumption of direct peace negotiations.
Still to come on DD News Hour. Man suspected of killing 18 people in a shooting in Maine found dead. G7 trade ministers begin a two-day meeting in Japan. European Union leaders wrap up summit, call for civilians in Gaza to be protected.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine, and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
While you're watching DD India News Hour, I'm Siddharth Bhardwaj and our correspondent Amritpal Singh joins us live from Lebanon border. Amritpal, what latest do you have for us? What is the situation there right now?
The situation where I am up north on the Israel-Lebanon border. The Hezbollah intermittently fires rockets into the Israeli defense, into the Israeli territory. Basically because they had said that if Israel enters the Gaza Strip via ground and takes its forces in a ground assault, they would increase the attacks, and that's what they've done. But it's not a full-fledged. Israel is responding back, but the border with Lebanon is not as hot as things in Gaza are. In Gaza, they continue to pound targets. The Israeli Air Force has pounded 150 targets in Gaza Strip alone. And by the way, it's a very small strip, just about 41 kilometers long, at width 6 kilometers to 12 kilometers wide at different places. Yeah. So it is a very small strip. You can say about 130 square miles. So not much there space, but 150 targets. So you can well imagine the kind of bombarding that's going on in the Gaza Strip. Also, their military has entered, the Israeli Defense Forces, the army has entered along with tanks inside the Gaza Strip. They are still there. They are pounding targets. They are saying, so basically the ground offensive has opened. It is a limited opening, but unlike what they did day before and yesterday, where they went in and came out after localized raids, but now they are staying on and fighting on the ground. And they say the Hamas has now retreated back into tunnels. This is what the Israeli version is, and they are looking at how to chase them. But that's not going to be easy because given the Hamas guerrilla fighters, terrorists, however you want to look at them, have a certain strength which they've weakened, of course, but they're not completely decimated as yet. So there would be a long fight. Just a moment, I'm live. You can speak to my driver. Just a moment, I'm live. So so that is what it is, yeah.
Okay, Amritpal, if there are no such...
I don't understand, hey bro. Press card.
Amritpal, if there are...
Press card dikha deo.
Amritpal, if there are no such security measures, if there are no such strict security measures, could you just show us what is happening there?
Yeah. Okay, Siddharth, I'll have to go. There are people stopping us from here. I think the police is asking us to move. I'll join you later, Siddharth.
All right, we'll try to connect to Amritpal Singh, who's live from the Lebanon border, later in this segment. Now, 16-year-old Iranian girl Amita Jeravan dies following an alleged confrontation with officers for violating the country's strict hijab law. According to Iranian state news agency, the teen went into a coma for some time after suffering from brain damage. Now, on your screens are visuals of the alleged confrontation that happened between the teen and the police in the Tehran metro. The incident comes over a year after the death of Mahsa Amini in the morality police custody triggered unprecedented protests in Iran. The man suspected of killing 18 people in a shooting rampage in Maine was found dead on Friday, ending a 48-hour manhunt that followed the most lethal episode of gun violence in the United States. More details in our next report.
Joe was the only one that would come up and hug me and say, "I love you, Dad, I love you, Dad." And sometimes I'd say, "I love you" back. Sometimes I wouldn't say that.
Meet Leroy Walker, whose son was one of the victims in the devastating shooting that occurred on 25th October at a bowling alley and popular restaurant in Lewiston, Maine. The man suspected of killing 18 and injuring 13 others was found dead with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound in Lisbon Falls late on Friday. With this, a 48-hour manhunt ended that followed the most lethal episode of gun violence in the state's history. Maine Governor Janet Mills confirmed that the main shooting suspect has died.
He is dead. I've called President Biden to inform him about this news. Like many people, I'm breathing a sigh of relief tonight knowing that Robert Card is no longer a threat to anyone. I know there are some people, and many people, who share that sentiment, but I also know that his death may not bring solace to many. But now is a time to heal.
According to law enforcement officials, the suspect had a history of mental illness and was committed to a psychiatric facility for 2 weeks during the summer of 2023, after which he was released. Following Maine mass shootings, Jared Golden, one of the only 5 Democratic representatives to oppose planned ban on assault-style weapons, said that he was changing his stance on gun legislation and would now support banning assault weapons.
Among many other misjudgments, I have opposed efforts to ban deadly weapons of war like the assault rifle used to carry out this crime. The time has now come for me to take responsibility for this failure, which is why I now call on the United States Congress to ban assault rifles like the one used by the sick perpetrator of this mass killing in my hometown of Lewiston, Maine. For the good of my community, I will work with any colleague to get this done in the time that I have left in Congress.
Meanwhile, the United States has stopped issuing export licenses for most civilian firearms and ammunition for 90 days for all non-governmental users. U.S. President Joe Biden said in a statement on Friday that the nation was mourning another senseless and tragic mass shooting and urged Republicans to help pass a bill banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, to enact universal background checks, to require safe storage of guns, and end immunity from liability for gun manufacturers. The U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms. The country has seen multiple massacres involving assault-style weapons in recent years. Biden, who is running for re-election in 2024, is expected to make proposals to tighten gun laws, a key component of his campaign. Bureau Report, TD India.
The group of 7 or G7 trade ministers and other participants began a 2-day meeting in Osaka, Japan on Saturday. Amid the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine, Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa said in opening remarks that G7 members had a responsibility to guide the world based on their values. The meeting is expected to discuss strengthening supply chains to bolster economic security. India's Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal will attend the 2-day-long meet. The minister will also have bilateral meetings with a few G7 countries, invitee countries and a few international organizations such as WTO on the sidelines of the outreach programs. European Union leaders have wrapped up their summit where they called for civilians in Gaza to be protected and vowed to continue supporting Ukraine. Although they agreed on a joint declaration, officials now face weeks of complex negotiations over the bloc's long-term budget and how to source funds for longer-term commitments to Kyiv. Julia Chapman reports from Brussels.
Top of the agenda, but it was by no means the only important issue. EU diplomats made clear that nothing would distract the bloc from supporting Ukraine. Most member states weren't too bothered by Slovakia's new prime minister saying his country would stop sending weapons to Ukraine. One EU diplomat told me that the announcement doesn't matter because Slovakia has already sent everything it had. And more money will be sent from the EU to Ukraine. Some of this cash will come from profits made from the more than $200 billion in Russian assets seized by the European Union. Beyond the war in the Middle East and the war on the EU's doorstep, the 27 also got to work on resolving 2 of its most contentious disputes. The first one was a brief discussion on migration. The second, a robust debate on topping up the EU's long-term budget. Both of these tricky topics remained unresolved and will be tackled again in December at the next EU Council meeting. Alex Cadier in Brussels reporting for DD India.
The leaders of France, Germany and Italy called on Serbia to deliver on de facto recognition of Kosovo, which declared independence in 2008, but which Belgrade has continued to regard as its province. In a statement the day after holding talks with both sides, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said it was time for the Balkan neighbours to deliver on previous commitments. Their move follows growing international concerns that the former wartime foes could return to open conflict following a series of violent incidents in recent months. Much of the tension has focused on northern Kosovo, where ethnic Serbs form a majority. The rest of Kosovo is overwhelmingly ethnic Albanian. In their statement, Macron, Scholz and Meloni repeated long-standing calls for Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti to establish an association of Serb-majority municipalities in the north, giving the local Serbs a degree of self-government. Now, in a tragic incident, at least 28 people have died and 18 remain missing after a mine fire in Kazakhstan on Saturday. Operator ArcelorMittal Termichau, the local unit of the Luxembourg-based steelmaker, claimed 206 of 252 people at the Kostenko mine had been evacuated and 18 people had sought medical attention. Meanwhile, Kazakh President Tokayev, who expressed condolences to the victims' families and declared a national day of mourning on October 29th, ordered his cabinet to stop investment cooperation with the ArcelorMittal Termitau. Well, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. More than 35 bushfires were burning in Queensland state in Australia as authorities urged thousands of people to evacuate. The bushfires have destroyed at least 30 homes, continue to threaten rural towns. The internationally known 12 feet tall Little Amal, a 10-year-old Syrian refugee girl's puppet, has been deployed at the US-Mexican border. The puppet aims to give hope that migrant families waiting for their chance to cross the border and finish their dangerous journey. A never-before-seen artwork of renowned artist Claude Monet is expected to be a top lot at Christie's New York's upcoming 20th and 21st century art auctions. Still to come on DD India News Hour. South Korean and US troops hold joint future combat drills. Fighting continues in Sudan. Rapid support forces take control of Nyala. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually distributes over 51,000 appointment letters to newly inducted recruits under Rozgar Mela. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Now, Israel says it killed Hamas commander who helped plan October 7 attacks. Ground battles rage in Gaza after Israel escalates bombing. Hamas issues full force warning. UN General Assembly adopts Gaza resolution calling for immediate and sustained humanitarian truce. Israel slams UN resolution, says dark day for UN and mankind. Lewiston massacre suspect of killing 18 people found dead near the town of Lisbon, apparently of self-inflicted gunshot wound. Well, Dr. Roy Cesana joins us from Tel Aviv. Sir, a very warm welcome to the show, first of all. Now, telecommunications and internet is down in Gaza, and WHO says the blackout is making it impossible for ambulances to reach injured there. Civilians are bearing the brunt, and Hamas is using them as human shield. How do you see this?
This is exactly the way I see this, and this is most unfortunate, and yet it is very indicative of the way Hamas is acting, because over the last 2 decades, actually, Hamas has been shooting missiles and rockets towards the center of Israel with no regard at all for humanitarian causes. When Israel is bombing military infrastructure in the Gaza Strip, we are warning the population surrounding it to evacuate the area. Hamas is doing the exact opposite and is essentially acting in blatant disregard of the international laws of war. So unfortunately, Hamas is also using Palestinian civilians as meat shields.
Indeed. IDF says Hamas's aerial forces head Isam Abu Rukbeh is killed now. Do you see this as a massive defeat for Hamas?
Not yet, but we're not interested in killing. We're not interested in vengeance or in killing this man or the other. Hamas has kidnapped. It has kidnapped 200 Israeli children, women, grandmothers, grandfathers, and they are keeping them in their tunnels in the Gaza Strip. So we're not interested in killing this man or the other, this senior official or whatever. We want our children back. And as soon as Hamas gives us our children back, and the Hamas leaders stand to trial for the crimes against humanity, then this war will end. It doesn't need to continue.
Okay. Protests and confrontations are escalating in West Bank, also in Jerusalem, and some reports say over 100 West Bank Palestinians have been killed in clashes. What do you make out of this?
I'm afraid I can't go into details about what's happening right now. It seems that there is currently, overnight, there was a bombardment in the area, which is called the communications blackout. And this bombardment was, again, apparently followed by tanks and soldiers going into the area. But it is still unclear what's happening in there. And frankly, every hour, things change and events unfold in front of our eyes. So we need to keep watch, and hopefully we'll know better in a few hours.
Okay. Tension is continuously rising on the Lebanon border as well. Do you think Hezbollah is in a state of having a war with Israel?
So we see that Hezbollah is acting not only against Israel, occasionally launching rockets towards the north, but also it's acting against the American bases in Syria. We see this happening, again, in front of our eyes. There is a very real concern that Hezbollah is collaborating with Hamas and obviously with Iran. And we're still waiting to see how this unfolds.
Okay. And how do you see, Israel right now is expanding its ground offensive in Gaza? What do you make out of it? What can happen next? Keeping in mind the very fact that there are hostages there.
Yeah. So right now, this is the kind of campaign that I don't think has ever been waged before in history, where on the one hand, we're trying to rescue more than 200 Israeli civilians who were kidnapped, while still waging war, in effect, on the strip. We have more than 300,000 reservists were called back into service in Israel, and Israel is certainly prepared to go deep into the strip if necessary, but so far it has been cautious in its approach. And I would even say that Israel has acted in a humanitarian way, as much as the evils of war allow us to be, by urging the population of Gaza to move away from Hamas headquarters and from military facilities. I hope that this conflict, this war, would come to a resolution very, very quickly. And I want to say something directly to the Hamas leaders, if they're listening. Please save your people. You've ordered atrocities to be done to the Jewish people under your command, but you can still put a stop to this. You claim to believe in Allah the compassionate. Well, show compassion towards your fellow Palestinians and stand down. Give us our children back and stand trial for your crimes, and this entire war can stop right now. It has not been opened by Israel. It started with your act of brutal aggression, and you can finish it today, this evening. Just give us our people back.
Okay. And how do you see the voting which has just took place at the UN?
I think that the UN is not seeing the complete picture. I think it is only looking at one side of the picture. It's looking at Hamas, and it's looking at the casualties that are happening there. And I'll tell you right now, the casualties are horrible, but that's war. And again, this war can end. Let it end. It's up to Hamas to end it.
How do you see the war will end?
I see the war ending if Hamas leaders are giving us our children, our women, our civilians that were kidnapped, if they give them back, and if they stand trial for their crimes.
Okay, so
that's how the war will end.
All right, so you're saying that if Hamas will return the hostages, the war will end?
Return their hostages, and the leaders of Hamas should stand trial for their crimes, because more than 1,500 Israeli civilians were killed in their brutal attack. Someone needs to stand to trial for this crime.
Okay, all right. On that note, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
South Korean and US troops conducted joint future combat drills on Thursday as part of efforts to modernize their militaries. The drills involved drones, an unmanned vehicle, and variable laser sensors. Besides, over 120 soldiers from both sides joined forces to fight against a trained team of opposing forces in a mock-up town. The training came as South Korea's military has been conducting a series of annual Hoguk autumn exercise since early this month, aimed at improving responses to North Korea's nuclear and missile threats.
Army, we demonstrated with one objective, the meaning of the tactical alliance. We also understood each other, and we know how to fight together. I feel that today, the training exercise only further strengthened the alliance between our two countries by allowing us to share the best practices at the small unit level.
Meanwhile, North Korea has said it was the steadfast will of Pyongyang to expand ties with Russia, criticizing a recent condemnation by the United States and its allies on Pyongyang's suspected arms deliveries to Russia as politicized and distorted. North Korean Foreign Minister denounced military cooperation between the US, South Korea and Japan and said Pyongyang's relations with Moscow will act as a powerful strategic element if security in the region is endangered. The United States, South Korea and Japan have been stepping up trilateral security cooperation to counter the North's growing nuclear and missile threats. North Korea and Russia pledged closer military cooperation when their leaders met in September in Russia's Far East. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un this month and discussed implementing the agreements reached at the summit. Fighting is spreading further in Sudan, with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces taking control of Sudan's second-largest city, Nyala, from the government's troops. DD India's Patrick Oyd reports from South Sudan's capital, Juba.
Sudan's second-largest city, Nyala, is located at the border with Central African Republic. The United Nations says Fighting in and around Nyala has forced more than 670,000 people to flee their homes. It further says the city's hospitals are destroyed. Many wounded people are unable to get treatment. Rapid Support Forces second in command, Abdul Rahim Daglo, led the capture of Nyala. Mr. Abdul Rahim was sanctioned by the U.S. for his alleged role in ethnic cleansing in West Darfur. The fighting is intensifying as the Rapid Support Forces and Sudan Armed Forces are set to resume peace talks in Saudi Arabia. The East African regional body, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, says ending war in Sudan needs collective actions by regional as well as international actors.
What we would like to see IGAD and the African Union jointly with the support of international community is to stop this fight. Let us join hands. This is not a time for long talks and for big talks. Our challenge is very simple, really how to stop war in the Republic of Sudan.
There are ongoing consultations among various political factions in Sudan, in Juba, to try and find ways of ending the violence in Sudan. However, on the ground in Sudan, there is still no sign of the violence ending soon. Patrick Oyet in Juba, reporting for DD India.
A U.S. judge has asked former President Donald Trump whether he wants to appear on television during his trial in federal court. Trump has been charged of attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The question comes after media organizations in two separate filings argued that the public has a right to see an unprecedented trial of a former U.S. president who's also the front-runner for the 2024 Republican nomination. Back home, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday virtually distributed more than 51,000 appointment letters to newly inducted recruits in various government departments and organizations under Rozgar Mela or Job Fair. The Job Fair is being held at 37 locations across India. PM Modi also addressed the appointees on the occasion. He said that this job fair is the proof of his government's commitment to the youth of the country.
देश के अलग अलग राज्यों और केंद्र शासित प्रदेशों में आयोजित होने वाले रोजगार मेले युवाओं के प्रति हमारे कमिटमेंट का प्रमाण है। हमारी सरकार युवाओं के भविष्य को ध्यान में रखकर मिशन मोड में काम कर रही है। हम न सिर्फ रोजगार दे रहे हैं, बल्कि पूरे सिस्टम को पारदर्शी भी बनाए हुए हैं, जिससे नियुक्ति प्रक्रिया पर युवाओं का भरोसा बना हुआ है।
And the South Central Railway is running Amrit Kalash Yatra special trains from Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh and Secunderabad in Telangana. The special train marked the final leg journey of Amrit Kalash from state capital to national capital in New Delhi and culmination of Meri Mati Mera Desh campaign. Amrit Kalash Yatra serves as a tribute to the national heroes who devoted their lives to the nation. As part of the campaign, sacred soil and rice are being collected from households across India in Amrit Kalash, which will be used for creation of Amrit Vatika and Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav Memorial at Kartavya Path at India Gate in New Delhi. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Rolling Stones tops UK album charts with Hackney Diamonds. Indian para-athletes create history, bag 111 medals in Hangzhou.
Welcome to Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Unified Payments Interface has emerged as a game changer in India's quest for a digital future. By enabling seamless, secure and inclusive transactions, UPI has transformed the way Indians transact, empowering millions and driving economic growth.
So you see, if you are buying a 10 rupees tea, you can make the payment through your phone. This UPI or this particular code, you can scan and you can make the payment. We give you this special story on how India's UPI system is changing the whole gamut of infrastructure, especially the digital public infrastructure in the country. India's unified payment interface is reshaping the nation's digital landscape with its secure and inclusive transactions, propelling economic growth. In the fiscal year 2023, UPI witnessed a staggering $1.7 trillion in transaction, making it a global favorite. Japan, Singapore, UAE, France, and UK are keen to adopt UPI. Recently, France, United Arab Emirates, and Sri Lanka have joined this digital revolution, embracing India's payment technology. UPI's entry into France marks its foothold in Europe, while its presence in Sri Lanka and UAE strengthens India's economic ties with these nations. This global expansion of UPI also signals promising prospects for India's fintech sector.
Because of the instant and seamless nature, a very large proportion of Indian consumers are able to now make payments very easily and smoothly. Second, UPI takes away the reliance on cash, and hopefully over time it will bring down the level of cash in the country and also formalize the economy. And third, a lot of the innovation that is being built in India in financial services is being built on top of UPI as the fundamental rails. So a lot of banks and fintechs and also non-financial service companies are actually innovating on top of UPI to provide better services to Indian consumers.
All of us in India underestimate what change in last 10 years India has brought about. In fact, one of the most phenomenal biggest change that we see all around is that from small to large merchant, everybody in nook and corner of everywhere in the country is taking now mobile payments. The best part about it is that UPI, the innovation of India, is now the pride of India. Everywhere you go, there is a merchant who is ready to take, with the government scheme of 0% India charge to small merchant, makes it even incredible, small or large, online or offline, everybody is happily taking UPI payments. In fact, the scale and the impact of UPI is heard globally.
In 2022, the sector attracted $4.8 billion in funding and is anticipated to grow into a $2 trillion industry by 2030. UPI, initiated in 2016, has played a pivotal role in India's fintech narrative, evolving from just 1 million transactions in October 2016 to surpassing 10 billion transactions. Furthermore, internationalization of UPI aligns with Indians' substantial overseas spending, which amounted to $10 billion between April and December 2022. This expansion holds great potential for fueling India's economic growth. Tapush Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sport. And on Saturday, Indian para-athletes made history by finishing their Hangzhou Asian Para Games campaign with a record 111 medals, the most for the country in any major international multi-sport event. The Indian para-athletes won 29 gold, 31 silver and 51 bronze medals at the Hangzhou Para-Asian Games. India finished 5th in the medal count. This remarkable feat supersedes India's previous best of 72 medals, which was recorded in the 2018 edition of the Asian Para Games in Indonesia. What makes this achievement so special is that India's para-athletes have pipped their compatriots in going past the 107 medal mark at the Asian Games. Dilip Gavit kick-started medal streak by helping India to reach the coveted three-figure mark. He secured gold in the men's T47 400-meter event with a time of 49.48 seconds. In the para-chess men's team of B1 category, the terrific trio of Ashwin, Darpan and Saundarya secures a spectacular gold. Meanwhile, India sweeps the podium in men's chess B1 individual event. Darpan Irani brought home the gold with his middle game maneuvering. Saundarya Pradhan bagged silver, while Ashwin Makwana clinched bronze. In PR3 mixed doubles sculls rowing event, the Indian duo bagged silver with a timing of 8 minutes 50.71 seconds. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the milestone and attributed the success to the exceptional talent, dedication and perseverance of Indian athletes. In social media post, PM Modi said, 100 medals at the Asian Para Games, a moment of unparalleled joy. This success is a result of sheer talent, hard work and determination of our athletes. This remarkable milestone fills our hearts with immense pride. I extend my deepest appreciation and gratitude to our incredible athletes, coaches and the entire support system working with them. These triumphs inspire us all. They serve as a reminder that nothing is impossible for our youth. Well, joining me live is DD India correspondent Narayan Singh. Narayan, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed India's para-athletes for their exceptional show in Hangzhou. Certainly looks like how much importance we are giving to this field.
Siddharth, definitely. It's the words of encouragement from the PM Modi is always there for athletes, and it acts like a morale booster for our athletes. And when the Prime Minister of a country says that in sports there are no losers, there are only winners and learners, definitely it helps the athletes to perform at the next level, and that is what happening. We saw at the Para-Asian Games, Indian athletes won a record number of 111 medals, the most by the India in any multi-sports international event. This shows that what kind of environment is right now in India as far as the sports is concerned. And if you take a look, there are schemes rolled by the government like TOPS. It is helping our athletes a lot. If you talk about this Para-Asian Games, there were 46 TOPS athletes participating in the Para-Asian Games in Hangzhou, and out of 46, 36 won medals. So there is a right kind of schemes for our athletes. That's why we are getting results. If we talk about the motivation they are getting, that is more important than the infrastructure. When we talk to players, they say that they are very happy because they are getting recognition, and they are always, the system is always there.
Yeah.
They are always happy that the Prime Minister of the country just tweets for them. And if you take a look, whenever they are coming from a mega event like Asian Games, Para-Asian Games or Olympics, PM is always there. PM Modi chats with them. So these things act like a morale booster for them and help them to perform well in the sports. And this is the big thing. If you take a look, when the 141st session of the IOC took place in Mumbai, at that time the IOC President Thomas Bach said that the presence of PM Modi at this event shows that the interest of India in the Olympic sports, and
Definitely.
that's why we are growing.
Definitely, Narayan, and be it significant increment in sports budget or various schemes launched by government, they are certainly helping our athletes to win it big on the international level.
True, it's helping our athletes a lot. As you mentioned, we have mentioned there are schemes like TOP, and there are the schemes like Khelo India for the grassroots level sports. It is if you talk about the Khelo India, it's a very important and the crucial scheme in Indian sporting system. It's the brainchild of the PM Modi. When he came to the power, he brought this scheme so that the grassroots level sporting system of the India can be made strong. And because of that, we saw multiple international medal winners from that scheme, and there is a smooth transition from Khelo India to the top scheme also. Where first they are playing at the Khelo India, and a smooth transition to the tops.
All right, with this, thank you so much, Narayan, for joining in. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Prasar Bharati from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.